Jordan, he was murdered on the way home from work. Men attacked him, maybe to take his bicycle, steal his bicycle. There was a tremendous fight. He broke away. Someone shot him in the back. He died on the street. And um, and I think what was true for me, and I think is true for most people who lose someone they love deeply, is this tremendous need to know: is that person, that soul, does that soul still exist? And also, is are they okay? Wherever they are they okay?
Matthew McKay, welcome to Passion Harvest.
Glad to be with you, Luisa.
I'm looking forward to our conversation today. I guess let's get started and dive right in. For the audience, would you mind just sharing about your journey and profound quest to reconnect with your murdered son, Jordan?
Yeah, so Jordan died 16 years ago this week. As a matter of fact, he was murdered on the way home from work. Men attacked him, maybe to take his bicycle, steal his bicycle. There was a tremendous fight. He broke away. Someone shot him in the back. He died on the street. And um, and I think what was true for me, and I think is true for most people who lose someone they love deeply, is this tremendous need to know: is that person, that soul, does that soul still exist? And also, is are they okay? Wherever they are they okay? And I just had this deep need to know if Jordan existed and was he okay. So that started me on the journey. And I began with mediums, and Felix Lerma, Austin Wells, really wonderful mediums. Um, but the experience with the medium was that they were there was a one-sided conversation. They were sort of reporting what Jordan was saying, but I wasn't able to be part of the conversation. And then I investigated something called induced after death communication, IADC, that Alan Botkin developed. That's a kind of a variant of EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and he discovered it by accident. And in that experience, I actually had direct contact with Jordan. I heard his voice; it was very clear, and he was telling me the things that I really desperately wanted to know: that he was good, he was happy, he was with us, he loved us, and so forth. Um, but it still wasn't a conversation. I wasn't able to really talk to him. I just had the experience of hearing him say some spontaneous and very beautiful, welcome things. Um, so I did some past life and between life regressions, hypnotic regressions. I was looking for him in so many different ways. And then the late Ralph Messner taught me how to channel. And from that moment on, I was able to do what I had so desperately needed to do, which was to have a conversation with Jordan and be able to ask him questions. And he started to talk to me. He started to answer my deepest questions, and his answers were something that I could not have imagined. They blew my mind. He gave me a picture of the afterlife, a picture of our purpose here and coming to this planet. And so he was teaching me amazing things. And the more questions I asked, the more answers he offered. Um, so he wrote the book Lessons from the Afterlife to explain. He felt like it was really important to explain the purpose of physical existence, why we come to these planets, what we're doing here, and and what the purpose of life is really. So that was why he wanted to write this book, and that's where it came from.
Thank you, Matt. And I just have to say, I'm very sorry. I'm just going to backtrack to ask you about grief and suffering, and is it something one can ever overcome?
Yes, well, yes and no. At least I can report my experience, and a lot of of my clients that I've worked with who have, profound grief. Um, I don't think we ever stop missing that physical form that that soul takes. We never stop miss. I never stop missing Jordan and being able to hug him and being able to hear his voice and watch him grow and develop. He would be almost 40 now. And I missed all of that and I continue to miss it. And sometimes it's just a very desperate, stabbing pain. On the other hand, I don't have grief for he's gone. I don't have the sense I've lost him. I, I continue to have the experience very gratefully that Jordan is with me, that I can talk to him anytime I want, that our relationship is as alive and vital as it ever was when he was here on Earth, and that our love continues with the same power and strength. So, and also I have access to a soul who has incredible amount of knowledge. That we come here and we have amnesia. We forget everything so that we can take this life very seriously and learn all the lessons here. Um, but he has, the knowledge of a soul who's lived hundreds of times and has learned so much, and that knowledge, some of that he shares with me. So I have an access to a soul that not just as Jordan as he was in life, but Jordan as a soul who has learned so much over many lives.
And shared with you incredible universal truths. I just want to ask a question for the audience, perhaps as some people that are listening or watching that are in the depths of grief or experiencing grief. What would your advice be to them?
I think the most important thing you can do is is reopen the relationship to that loved one. Start communicating, open the channel of communication. And I've taught hundreds and hundreds of people how to channel. And as soon as they start communicating to their loved one, um, a lot of that pain begins to diminish. The pain that they're gone diminishes because they're still there, and they have access to them anytime they want. And so that, to me, the most important thing is to realize that the relationship and the love is still vital, is still living, and is still accessible to them. And to begin and start, if you want, just very simply start by writing a letter to your loved one, and then do a little meditation and open the channel and allow an answer to form in your mind. And our loved ones have the capacity to communicate to us telepathically. They will do that. You have to kind of allow and make room for it, to kind of quiet your mind a little bit and make room for them to enter and bring thoughts to you. But you can do that. And it makes a difference, because instead of an absolute loss and absence of that soul, you begin to realize they are still there. We are still together. We still love each other. I mean, if you want, I can go through the steps to channel. I mean,
I think that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so what Ralph taught me, and it was kind of amazingly simple. And the very first time I tried it, I found that I could do it. And I don't have any special powers. I'm not a medium. I'm not clairvoyant or clairaudient. But what he taught me to do was, first of all, simply just get into a meditative state. Also have something to write on, because I think it really helps to actually write questions and write answers. So he taught me how to simply get into a meditative state, a simple Vipassana breath-based meditation. Bring your attention down to your diaphragm, your abdomen, center of breath. Your attention is now there in the center of your body. Note your breath. I usually just count my out breaths. So the first out breath is 1, the second one's 2, 3, 4. Count to 10. If I don't feel like the channel was quite ready to open, I can do another 10 or another 10. So I'll just keep meditating until I feel a sense of quietness beginning to descend on me. And with that quietness comes an openness, a receptivity. Then I imagine, as Ralph taught me, that there's an orb that's the color of the sun just above my head. I think of Jordan. I'm allowing myself to be fully aware of my love for him, and then I visualize that orb turning into a channel that goes directly to him. And I actually oftentimes feel the openness in the top of my head. I can feel the channel opening, but it doesn't matter whether you can feel it or not. As soon as you think of your loved one, you're starting to open the channel. I think people don't realize that when they think of that person on the other side, the channel starts to open. When you remember something that you did together, or you think of how precious they are to you, or even you're feeling grief, the channel is starting to open. And if you listen, you can hear them talk to you. So once the channel is open, I think it's important to, I also, by the way, I usually keep a physical reminder, George, something that connects me to him. And I have something that does some eye fixation, like a candle. So I have a candle, I have an object that Jordan gave me that connects me to him. And all those things sort of help to open the channel. Once the channel is open, I write down my first question. And the act of writing it down, you enter an altered state. You're watching the words take shape on the page. Um, after the question is written down, just wait and allow what the first word that enters your mind, write that down, and then the next and the next. Something will enter your mind, and just trust that whatever it is going to be relevant to what that dear soul wants to tell you. Sometimes it comes as just a few words, just very compressed. Sometimes the answers come in as an image or a picture. Sometimes they come as a download where you are just literally aware of an enormous truth or sense of something, and then you have to go find the words for it. And sometimes it comes as a really, like a fire hose, a fast stream of communication you can barely keep up with. So it comes in all different ways. And so just be prepared that that soul can communicate to you in so many different ways. And write down whatever you get. And when you're ready, ask your next question, open again, receive the answer. And so, I've had the opportunity to fill many notebooks with the things Jordan has told me. Sometimes he's just giving me advice about how to live my life, and he's got a lot of better ideas than I usually have. I deeply appreciate that. Sometimes he's involved in writing these books, and he's basically dictating, and I'm writing down what he wants to convey to an audience of souls. So sometimes he's just telling me about his new life. He's incarnated again. He's a young girl, and he's wanting to tell me what's going on in that life. So I mean, there are many different kinds of communications, but a lot of what he's been doing is telling me about the afterlife and the purpose of living and so forth, which I've tried to provide in these books.
Absolutely remarkable, and I can't wait to ask you some questions about what Jordan's told you. But like anything, I'm assuming with the channeling, the more you practice at it, the more proficient, the more familiar it becomes.
Yeah, it does, and I can sort of take shortcuts to enter that altered state to open the channel, and so it's true that it gets easier, although there are times when I'm very distracted, and even for the hundreds of times we've talked, I have a little bit of difficulty opening the channel because I'm not in a receptive state. Something is going on that so if I have strong emotions, sometimes that makes it a little hard to get into that channel state. And speaking of strong emotions, I mean, that's one of the things that it can make it difficult to hear from loved ones on the other side. When we have this enormous waves of grief, which are, basically waves of love and loss. Sometimes it's hard to hear what's coming from the other side when we have a big wave of emotion. So that's why the little meditation is kind of is I think an important part of channeling. It's to get into a place where there's a kind of a quietness inside, and some of those emotions tail off a little bit, and that quietness allows us to open the channel and listen.
Good point. Thank you. Did Jordan tell you why he chose to die at that point in time of his life?
Yes, I that was a really it was a hard question for me to ask. Why
Yes.
did he leave us? And what he says is that souls pretty much have an idea of how long their life is going to be. And he knew entering this life uh, that it was going to be short and that we had agreed to that. Uh, his mother and I had agreed to that. And of course, my wife, Judy, says, when we were in that agreement, she wasn't there. She doesn't lie that at all. That she agreed to Jordan living a very short life, but he says that it was our agreement, is our understanding, and the purpose of this life was he had some very specific things he wanted to learn, um, but he was also recovering from a very difficult past life. He was actually a bootlegger in a past life, and there's a lot of violence in that life, and also there's violence in his family of origin in that life, and he was in part just kind of uh, gun shy, literally gun shy. I mean, for example, he's very afraid of the police. As a little boy, he'd be terrified that when he'd see a policeman, and it was bleed through from that past life. So in some ways he came to this life to rebuild trust and courage, I think, and he was able to do that, uh, and so in the current life he's in, he has some, he expects it to be a longer life, and he has some aspirations of what he wants to be and do in that life that was not going to happen in his life as Jordan. Although the other part was that he came to the life as Jordan, he says, so that we could collaborate after his death on these projects. Uh, Maybe this is too far afield, but I've done a lot of past life stuff. And in a past life, Jordan and I were in a yeshiva. He was an old rabbi, and I was a young guy and young rabbi, and we got very close. And after his death, I was communicating to him in that life, and which was very unacceptable in the yeshiva. And I eventually sort of got kicked out. But we had already in a past life had been sort of experimenting with how do we talk across the veil, and so we had apparently decided that we were going to try to do that in this life, and so that was another purpose that he had. So he had to he had to die in order for us to begin to do that.
Incredible. Did he tell you what happened when he died, when he transitioned from his physical body? What happens when we die?
So at first, I mean, because it was sudden, he was pretty confused, and he didn't even fully understand that he had died. He realized he lost the capacity to move, and he was actually hovering over his body. He died on a doorstep, uh, and he had rung the bell or knocked on the door, and they opened it, and he realized that he wasn't able to communicate. And so there was a period of confusion, and he very quickly visited his house where his girlfriend was sleeping and waiting for him. He describes very quickly visiting us, but and just realizing that had loosened from the physical plane in some way that was very unprepared for. But very quickly, he did get to what he calls the landing place, and the landing place is just adjacent to the spirit world. It's a place where we get used to not having a body. So in the landing place, we're getting used to, for example, instead of seeing straight ahead, we see 360. We are aware all around. Instead of walking with muscle power, we move by intention. Simply, I want to go there, and I move in that direction. And the other thing we have to get used to is whatever we imagine, or the pictures we form in our consciousness actually can be projected out as energy and look real. So when he got to the landing place, for example, he was starting to imagine monsters and scary transformer like objects, and he was seeing them, and he said, "My God, what is this stuff?" And then he tried to calm himself down and imagine Yosemite, which is a place he loves. He visualizes Yosemite. He can see it that he's like he's there. Then he thinks about an elephant. Now he's got an elephant in Yosemite. He realizes anything he thinks, he can literally create the image, and he has to sort of learn how to manage that. And that's one of the things that happens to us when we get to the spirit world. Sometimes our whatever's in our consciousness gets projected out as energy, and we can't distinguish it from reality. So there's a kind of a process of getting used to that capacity. So also in the landing place, it's usually set up to resemble something that's familiar to us. And in his case, is this lovely garden that sort of went on forever, very vibrant colors, sort of unnaturally vibrant colors. And then we start getting visitations, usually from guides or from loved ones who've passed over, so that we're greeted and we're given some comfort in that immediate moment. And they're communicating to us telepathically. So there's this whole process of kind of getting used to life without a body. Now, in some cases, we get to the landing place and we're really not ready to go in the spirit world. We're full of intense emotions. We're full of anger. We're full of fear or grief or something that's left over from this most immediate past life. And so we may have to go to a healing place or these special bardos where some of that can be overcome. And so the landing place is sort of a sorting zone. It's like, okay, you're ready to enter the spirit world. Good, we can escort you in. Or you're full of intense emotions. You're in some kind of pain and overwhelmed that that you can't get into the spirit world if you're full of intense negative emotions. So there has to be a healing process for that. So eventually, we all get in. And the first stop, I'll just say this and stop talking for a second. The first stop is where we actually go through a life review. And that's almost before anything is. Once you're in the spirit world, it's time for a life review. And it's a very intense experience because we not only review it like you're watching something on a screen, and you can see it like a movie, but we are actually experiencing everything we did as it was felt by the person we did it to or with. So, a father who slapped his son sees the slap, feels it as his son felt it, and then feels it as his son felt the effect of that slap over time. So this is an incredible experience of understanding the effect of our choices on others, not just at the moment, but over time. And so the life review is a profound experience. It's very powerful, and a lot is learned. And we have guides that are supporting us and helping us in this reverie that while we go through the review. So that's the very first step in the spirit.
So interesting. So just to backtrack, that you said he has reincarnated as a girl. So we'll call him Jordan. Jordan is also a soul in another dimension.
Yeah.
And that's the one you're communicating with.
I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah, I'm not communicating to Jordan as this young girl, this now
Yes.
12-year-old girl. So she knows nothing about me or Jordan. Has like we all do, have amnesia and has come here to learn her lessons. So that life is on some level kind of isolated. But what's important is that when we incarnate, some of our soul energy enters a physical body, but some of our soul energy always remains in the afterlife, always is in the spirit world. So your higher soul or your higher soul energy is in the spirit world while it is also in the body that you have entered. The same is true for me, same is true for Jordan. So Jordan is always in the spirit world, as are you, as am I, even though we are also, some of our soul energy enters the body and incarnates. So we essentially do two places at once. And when we communicate to loved ones uh, in the afterlife, we're communicating to the soul energy that always remains there, not to perhaps the new entity, the new incarnate entity that they have entered for another life.
Did Jordan say it was a choice? It was his choice to return to the physical reality as the young, well, she's young now, the girl.
Yeah, yeah, it's always our choice. Um, souls often will incarnate hundreds of times, but they do reach a point where they stop, and
Oh, there is an end point, because I often get asked the question. I get often asked the question, I'm never coming back. I don't want to come back. How can I end this reincarnation cycle?
yeah. Well, of course, we're so aware of the pain of this life because we're in the middle of it, and we have so many things that we struggle with: physical pain, tremendous emotional pain, losses, failures. I mean, this it's just but of course we come here for that pain. That pain is our primary teacher. That's why we come to a physical world, to encounter all of these struggles, because our main goal in incarnating is to learn how to love in the face of pain. You can't learn actually how to love in the spirit world. I mean, it's just there. It surrounds us. It's like the air that we breathe. But you can't actually learn how to do it because it's not a choice in the spirit world. It's just all around us. We have to come here to learn how to love in the face of pain, in the face of these huge obstacles that a physical world offers us. That's why we come. And so, yes, there's a lot of pain here. But when we return to the spirit world, we kind of forget about a lot of that pain. It's like we retain the lessons, but we kind of sort of take the pain with a grain of salt. It's like, well, that's what happens. I know it's hard to believe, but
It's just a story.
it's just a story. It's just something
That's
that
easy to
happens.
say, but yes.
For us, it's like this: we're in the middle of this thing and
Like,
this
oh my
drama.
God.
But when we leave the body and we go to the spirit world, the the pain becomes much less important than the lessons that we got from it, and everything we learned becomes really of great value. And one of the things that Jordan says over and over again, that we're on a sacred mission here. Souls are we're all part of God. We're all some little part of piece of God, and God creates souls to incarnate to physical worlds to learn lessons that God could not learn otherwise. God can't learn anything about loss. God doesn't know anything about loss. God doesn't lose anything. God has to learn about loss and grief by sending souls here to have losses and struggle with grief. That's how all, or collective consciousness, or God, that we're all part of, learns and evolves. And that's the other thing that Jordan says, that God, just like us, is always evolving and growing and learning, not static, not perfect. God continues to evolve. And we come to this earth to help God evolve while we're evolving. And that's our purpose. It's a sacred mission. Everything we learn is uploaded and becomes part of collective consciousness. And it's a very and so all the pain we suffer that is part of that learning is part of that sacred mission. And and so souls have in the afterlife, souls have a different relationship to pain than we do here. We're like, no, I don't want to have that. Take it away from me. Um, but in the afterlife, it's okay. I learned all this incredible stuff, and at some point I'm ready to go back and have new lessons, essentially.
And then at some point, there is no need to return.
At some point, souls um, reach a point where they are ready to stay in the spirit world. I'm not quite sure how they reach that decision. I mean, one thing that does happen in the spirit world is that souls for often brief periods of time can merge with all. I mean, we are always part of all, but they actually merge and download an incredible amounts of knowledge and experience It's very powerful, that merging experience, and it can't last for long. It's like plugging a wire into a high voltage, and the wire starts to get hot. You're just downloading this incredible amount of experience. And as we grow and mature as souls and evolve as souls, we can actually spend more time in that merging experience. And so we spend more time merged with all. And I think as we spend more time merged with all, we have less need to incarnate. That may be part of the experience. I'm speculating. Jordan has sort of implied that. But at some point, we've done enough. And I mean, it's like when you think about a career, people get to have a career, and at some point, maybe they've done that enough, whatever it is. And I think our career as incarnating souls of learning and growing by coming to physical planets, uh, you know, we get to a point where we're
An
ready to
expert in the field.
yeah, we're ready to let go. Now, but the other thing that's important about this is that we all have spiritual careers. And so every soul, even though that we may be incarnating here, is also starting to develop a spiritual career. And their spiritual careers are, like Jordan is a guide. And his spiritual career involves guiding and supporting souls here. Um, other spiritual careers include being a healer. There are actually spiritual careers that involve science. There's spiritual careers that involve art and creativity. Um, there are spiritual careers that involve the next universe that's going to be created and starting to design that. I mean, there's spiritual careers that we are also preparing for and growing into. And at some point, when we stop incarnating, we kind of are full time in our spiritual career.
Very interesting. You spoke about something along the lines that Jordan said one of the principal reason we're here is, despite all the conflicts and the contrast, is to always choose love or to return to love in our
Yeah.
humanness.
That's that's sort of the main purpose of our life, is to learn how to love and 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 to choose love. And Jordan talks about our life as being, full of moments of choice. And a moment of choice is oftentimes it involves our interactions with other souls, other humans, but not always. The moments of choice are basically the choice of acting on love versus what my emotions are making me want to do, or what my desires and cravings make me want to do. So we're frequently, throughout the day, there are dozens of moments of choice where we could act on love versus emotion-driven behavior, or ambition or ego-driven behavior. And so learning to notice those moments and being committed to choosing love versus emotion versus desire versus ego, um, is part of the work that we have to do. And so Jordan really emphasizes paying attention to the moments of choice, being committed to working with them, and being committed to bringing love to those moments. And that's one of the things that he thinks that we have to learn in this life.
Yes, it can be challenging. I guess the question is to always ask yourself the question, what would love do?
Yes, exactly. What would love do? What would love have me do?
Mm.
And there's a
We
little
often forget. But
Oh, we do. But see, the difference between the church I grew up in, Catholic Church, and what Jordan describes as a purpose of life, is that the mistakes we make are not sins. They're not judged. We're not rejected and sent to hell because we make mistakes and fail to love at times. They are just all opportunities to learning what happens when you don't love, when you act on emotion or desire or
ego,
ego
as you said.
instead of love. So these are not sins. These are not even failures. They are just learning experiences, which we come here for. So we're not judged for failing to love, or sometimes doing hurtful things instead of loving. We are simply you have to go through the life review, and we have to learn what that meant and how it affected people. That's what we have to do instead of being judged and sent to the hot place.
So what is love and where can we find it?
Well, look, that's really important, profoundly important question. What is love? According to Jordan, love is behavior. It's not a feeling. It's behavior. It's what we do. Love is caring in an active way. Love is compassion, active compassion. Love is knowing, like really trying to know and understand the, this other thing that we love. So knowing, caring, and having compassion, and doing that in an active way. That's what love is. It's and it and we get confused because we think, oh, like falling in love. An emotion is not love, because emotions come and go. We're, at different moments of time, we, even with people we're deeply connected to, we may not feel anything toward them at all. So emotions aren't love. Behavior is love. It's what we do. And it's every one of those moments of choice in which we can enact love. That's what love is made of, is those moments of choice in which we can enact love, turn love into action. And that's what he's been teaching me. Love is action.
And
And the action is caring, compassionate, and knowing and understanding.
empathetic. I guess that would apply not only to others, but to ourselves as well.
To love ourselves, we have to do those same three things: pay attention to our experience, know ourselves, care for ourselves, take care of ourselves, and have compassion for our pain and our struggle, and to turn that into action, into actual behavior. That's how love is manifested in the world.
It sounds so simple.
Yeah, we come here, and it takes us many lives, oftentimes, to learn these lessons. And one of the things that happens too, by the way, is, with incarnation, is that when we first start incarnating, and this is a very difficult planet, according to mediums and Jordan and lots of folks who know something about where other places we incarnate. It's a very difficult planet because these bodies are very difficult to control. These bodies are full, our limbic system is so intensely, overwhelmed with emotion at times. We have intense desires, intense urges. And the ego is such a powerful part of the physical brain that we have. So these urges are so powerful that it often takes quite a few incarnations to actually just learn how to manage this body and not be overruled by it. So some of our work is just learning how to deal with this physical entity. And over incarnations, we actually do get better and better at managing our urges, our emotions. So it's quite challenging. And so learning how to love with this body, this physical body that's so prey to intense emotions and desires, is in itself an enormous challenge.
And also, yes, and it alleviates suffering.
Yes, and alleviate suffering. Here's a kind of a silly example, maybe. I don't know. No, it's not silly. But it's small. So a mom has just had a struggle with her boss, and the boss is kind of being very critical, and she's now feeling anxious and hurt and worried about her job. She comes home. She's also very tired, and also anticipating all that must be done when she gets home. And her kid is upset because something happened at school, and it's a problem with his homework. And see, that's where learning how to love in the face of pain is. She's tired, she's anxious, she's distracted, she's overwhelmed by the tasks that are ahead of her. And still, what would love have her do in that moment is to sort of comfort her child and pay attention to the child's needs in the face of all of that, in the face of what was going on in her body, what's going on in her emotions, and so forth. So that's why we come here, to learn how to love in the face of all of what physically and emotionally affects us.
That was a beautiful example, not silly at all. You mentioned this planet. Does Jordan talk about other planets or other systems within the universe or the multiverse?
Well, not specifically. He acknowledged, I mean, the sense I have is that there are an enormous number of planets in this universe on which souls incarnate. But in each planet, there are life forms that develop, and when the life forms get to a certain level of sophistication and ability to engage in abstract thought, planning, um, then all the Creator begins to um, arrange for souls to incarnate in that particular life form. But there are many different kinds of life forms. There are some life forms that live underwater, for example, that souls incarnate in these water planets. There are some life forms that are in different dimensions that are not just the three dimensions that we're used to. So I, I really, don't have any specific understanding of what that's like. But there's a huge variety of life forms, and souls incarnate into those very different life forms on those very different planets.
And varying degrees of consciousness as well, or evolution.
Well, yes and no. I mean, they have to be evolved enough to have the capacity for abstract thought, because what we incarnate to learn. So you have to have the capacity to learn, um, and and remember. So and to make some degree of free will choices. That life form has to have a degree of choices available from which to learn. So whatever form it is, it has to have certain qualities, characteristics before all begins to incarnate souls into that form of life.
Hmm. Jordan also, thank you. Jordan also talks about reality and reality, what we perceive as our reality. Is it an illusion?
Yeah, it's such an important question. According to Jordan, reality is not an illusion. I mean, there really is a physical world. Um, uh, before there was any physical world, even before there was God or all, there was something that he calls primal energy, and or and there's just a dark void, and in that dark void is primal energy, which is a potential. Eventually, energy starts to evolve. The nature of energy is that it starts to evolve, and the first thing it evolves into is to start to become light. It starts to take the form or manifest as light. Um, and then eventually light becomes aware of itself, becomes conscious, and that's the beginning of God, or the beginning of all, or beginning of collective consciousness, whatever we want to call it. As light becomes aware of itself, it becomes conscious, and that is, the beginning of God, the divine, and then all begins to create physical substances. And it's sort of hard to explain this, but um, energy exists in a plane which is invisible. We can't see it, but consciousness can raise energy to a particular into something that's matter, that we can see and we can experience and we can touch and we can relate to, and eventually all begins to raise energy into matter that we can actually see as a universe. And in that universe, all sends souls to experience the universe in a way that all couldn't. So all sends, it's like a dad builds a playhouse for a kid. He can't get into the playhouse, it's too damn small for him. So but his kid can get into the playhouse and actually experience what it's like in there. So all, or God, sends us into essentially this universe, which is a playhouse that the God could not enter and be inside. So he sends us to be inside of it and learn all the lessons that a physical universe can teach. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the best I can explain what Jordan's told me. So yes, the
Perfect.
universe is real. The universe is real. The physical universe is real, and it's real for a reason, so that God can interact with it and learn from it by using individual souls to go there and gather knowledge and wisdom
And share it.
and share it and bring it back. And another metaphor that Jordan uses is that the individual souls are like a hive of bees, and they go out and gather nectar, honey, and then they bring it back to the hive. The hive is all, it's all, it's God. And so we just go out into the world, gather knowledge, gather wisdom, learn how to love in the face of all the obstacles and struggles and pain, and we bring that knowledge back to the God, back to the hive, back to all. And so it's just, and that's our sacred mission, is to go out and bring back the honey, the knowledge, the wisdom, the ability to love back to the hive.
Lovely. Big congratulations on your latest book, Lessons from the Afterlife.
And I mean, there's a website, seekingjordan.com, that has a lot of his writings on it. If people are interested, there's more there. And so I'm very welcome to come and visit that.
And I will leave a link if people want to click it below in the show notes to connect with you. Matt, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest today. Is there anything else on a final note that you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest audience that I haven't asked you?
Yes, Luisa, I do actually want to share one thing.
Wonderful.
What is so important to remember is that death has no dominion over love and over our relationships. The ones we love who are not here, who are on the other side, are living. The relationship is living. The love is every bit as alive as it was in life. And you have not lost anyone. We are all still together, even though we can't physically see loved ones who've gone to the other side. We are all still together. The love is every bit as strong. The relationship is every bit as real. And I just want you to be aware of that, because that's the most important thing Jordan has taught me, and it's changed my life. Just knowing the truth that our love lasts forever.
Oh, that's so comforting. Well, Matt McKay, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest, and thank you for all the work you and Jordan are doing.
Thank you, Lisa. Really enjoyed being with you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.